Shit. Shit.
Okay, good luck, guys.
All right.
Jug if you're live with your cough. Like
What the hell is happening? I don't know.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
this is all live. This is all live, guys, now. So hello and welcome everyone to AVI's fourth Funvocacy stream. For those of you who have started joining us recently, AVI is a consumer advocacy group in India fighting the ban on vapes and leading in tobacco harm reduction. Tobacco harm reduction is principally a concept where the objective is to help those who are addicted to nicotine and cannot quit it to switch to a safer alternative. For reference and example, the lockdown imposed was a harm reduction technique which the government used to reduce the harm COVID-19 does to India and her citizens. We applaud the government for that decision, and we hope the government would show the same understanding towards tobacco harm reduction someday. In the meantime, today, we have joining us from the AVI board, Juggy. Juggy, now you cough. Get the camera on. Hello.
Okay, fine. There you go. Thank you. You're right.
We also have joining us Samrat.
Hello.
And we have Manish.
Hi, vapors, smokers, and everybody else.
And we have Dhaval.
Hey everyone.
Behind the scenes, the backbone of this initiative to do the stream online, and an amazing person, we have Arun, who's not going to say hello to you guys, unfortunately. He's kind of shy that way. And of course, as your host for the evening, I am Kanav Rishi Kumar here. For today's highlight, we have a ton of action, drama, suspense, love, and romance. I am so sorry. I'm reading Desperate Housewives script. Oh, sorry. And for today's highlight, we have with us Dr. Rohan CHRA. As you all know, oh, you guys do not know, sorry, Dr. Rohan. Dr. Rohan is a very, very close friend of ours, and he's been working with AVI. Professor Dr. Rohan has a list of degrees. With the list of degrees will fill 100-page notebooks, which include a PhD from Harvard. He specializes in cardiology and diabetes, besides obesity management. He's an ex-US Army veteran who saw action in Afghanistan. He is attached to Breach Candy Hospital and Raheja Hospital, to name a few. He is a vapor and a strong believer in tobacco harm reduction. Doc is joining us today as a specialist, and we've had multiple people come as guests in our streams in AVI, Funvocacy 2 and 3. We've had a lawyer, another doctor. But today, Doc is a specialist in heart problems, and we're going to be focusing on medical issues today. So, Doc, to get things started, I wanted to ask you a very simple, very easy question. Vaping versus smoking, as somebody who's a heart patient, what would you recommend? Should they smoke? Should they vape? What if they're addicted to nicotine and they can't quit? What should they do?
See, my medical background straight away tells me to tell the person to try to stop everything first of all, right?
Right.
Otherwise, I would be unfaithful to my profession. But if I was to choose the lesser of the two, I would rather go with vaping than with smoking, because obviously smoking has got much more side effects, a lot more collateral damage than vaping does. And I myself have got tons of my patients who I myself have converted from smoking into vaping, and they're doing pretty well. So I would rather say, if you have a choice to choose between the devil and the deep sea, then I would rather go with vaping than with smoking. So that's where I stand on it, And being a vapor myself, I know how hard it is to have given up smoking. Being in the army, one of the few perks you get is cheap booze and cheap cigarettes. And that's one of the gifts which we carried forward. And unfortunately, it was, hard to give up smoking. So, I had to find an alternative. And over the last few years, I found, and being an ex-smoker myself, it was a lot of research on my part also. And I got familiarized with this domain, and I started vaping to see how it was. And obviously, since I was doing it myself, I did a lot of research and found out that definitely what the science says is that the vaping is 95% safer than smoking. And that's why, I'm willing to take the 5% risk, but, enjoy it. But at the same time, I'm enjoying my vaping, and yeah, it's much more safer than smoking.
So, Doc, I'm going to go off the script. the minute
Sure.
we've started, which is like epic. I think that's the reason everybody tolerates me, is because I add a lot of chaos to everything. But off the script and to my limited understanding, I want to ask you a few questions related to the medical field, industry, business, whichever way you want to look at it.
Right,
uh,
right.
we don't in the medical field have all the answers perfectly defined, as in everything is not always black and white. Am I correct when I say
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at just a simple subject like neurology, what we know is just 8% of the entire neurology. We're treating neurology with 8% of knowledge. So it's obvious that even things like vaping, we do not know anything about. But it's whatever we know is positive. So that's a good thing.
right? So there is a possibility that sometimes some of the understanding which some of the bigger organizations have or portray or share or display might be very conservative, reserved, and not 100% what is appropriate for every person individually.
It is, see, it all depends on the perspective. You look at if you look at the entire healthcare industry, it's a very interesting concept. Who gets to be labeled as a villain and who gets to be labeled as a hero, right? If you look at just a very simple fact, just looking from a medical point of view, right from the 1950s, the entire industry of the pharmaceutical industry labeled cholesterol and fat as the culprit, right? So we grew up, all of us grew up understanding that having high fat food is bad, and having this is fried stuff is bad, and this is bad, and that is bad. Whereas they've just started uncovering the evidence that now that it's not fat, it's sugar. Sugar is the main culprit which is causing most of our problems today. So perspectives change, and it takes a lot of time for people to get to that point to understand ki, yeah, what they were telling me is not right, and what is new evidence that is coming in is true. So it goes for any particular industry, especially with vaping and cigarettes. Cigarettes have been there. If you look at the history of smoking, at least 4 to 5,000 years ago, people started smoking. Vaping has started since 2004, 2005. You will be really surprised to know, Kanav, that the first e-cigarette was invented in 1873.
Really?
It was, yes, in 1873, the first e-cigarette. There is a patent in 1873 for the first e-cigarette. The second patent for the first e-cigarette came out in 1923. Then after that, the next patent for the e-cigarette came out in 1963. I don't know why it's all in threes, but then for some reason, it's coming out in threes. But if you go and check, there are a lot of patents which have been come because people understood 250 years ago, 250 years ago, okay, I'm speaking 250 years ago, doctors understood that smoking cigarettes are associated with health problems. And in those days, they had no jack shit idea about what these health problems are. They didn't even know what was a germ, they didn't know what's a virus, they didn't know what's a microbe, they didn't know how they got sexually transmitted disease. They just knew this woman is bad. So it's in those days, perspectives were different. So
Right.
when you look at it at the history of this, things have evolved, and people have understood that one component is bad, and they're looking for newer sources for safer alternatives.
So if my understanding from what you said is correct, information keeps coming, presenting itself, or research keeps happening, and we keep learning new things, and our understanding grows and develops. So as of today, where it is, some of the larger health-related organizations seem to condemn vaping. In the near future, there is a possibility that they might change their opinion with new findings and discoveries in this field. Is that correct?
That's the best part. That's the best part about the medical and the healthcare domain, that when the evidence points towards a certain conclusion,
Yeah.
usually the bodies which are responsible for making policies or formulating policies, like for example, you get the WHO, you get the American Heart Association, you get all these different associations with all fancy sounding names. Unfortunately, I am very much a member of many of them. But the thing is, and how all of our meetings are, all old men sitting down looking very serious. So it's a different meeting compared to the one we are having right now. But evidence has got its own charm. There's an old phrase in Latin which we use in forensic medicine. It's called res ipsa loquitur. This is Latin, okay? When you say res ipsa loquitur, it means in English, the thing speaks for itself. The evidence has to speak for itself. And as in when the newer research comes in and new studies come in on lungs, on heart, the effect of vaping on brain, and they find out that this is much more safer, they have to accept this evidence.
Right. And over here, I'd like to highlight the fact that you are a cardiologist and you do surgeries, if I'm not mistaken. So you get
I
to be
used
one of,
to. I used to.
so you've been
I mean,
hands-on essentially with the human body, and you've seen what damage what product does, and you've seen how it the signs show and the symptoms show. You're one of the few people who does the fact finding as well, other than the diagnosis, right?
right,
That's lovely. So
right.
in
So,
your
so
opinion,
basically, what we have found.
yeah, sorry, please continue.
No, no, go ahead, go ahead. In my
So
opinion, what you
yeah,
were going
so
to ask me
in
something.
your opinion, you must have you must have operated on people who are smokers. You must have, maybe you've operated on people who are vapors. You must have seen uh, the difference in what their bodies, damage being done to their bodies by the two. Can you draw a comparison for us between that?
So ultimately, why do you get problems in the first place is because something which is not natural to your body has entered your body and your body is trying to fight it off. That's fact. Okay. Whether it's a bacteria or whether it's a chemical, your body is designed to not accept anything that is natural to it. And your immune system is geared towards throwing that bugger out. You wouldn't want some next door person coming into your house and staying there. You'd want to throw him out. So that's the same way your body is designed. When you look at smoking, the as per se, if you look at the main ingredient in smoking, we call it the main ingredient is nicotine. As per se, nicotine is considered to be a stimulant. Okay, it's just like caffeine. It works by stimulating certain receptors. So it doesn't cause as much harm as people think it should. But what happens is when you smoke and you're having combustion, or what we call as generation of hydrocarbons or generation of multiple different chemicals, and we all know as many of us here must be ex-smokers and some of us might be still smokers, and you've been fed this information that smoke contains more than 4 to 5,000 chemicals in them. These chemicals, when you inhale them, they go into your lungs, they get absorbed into your bloodstream. So the first point of contact is your lung, the second point of contact is your bloodstream. So what happens is all the blood has to go to the heart, all blood. Okay, that's the main pumping station. So invariably all this blood lands up in the heart, starts causing a damage to the heart vessels, and these patients usually end up over a long period of time with injury to the walls of the vessels on the internal aspect. That's why these people start developing cholesterol plaques and stuff and all that. So that's why you go to any cardiologist who's worth his salt. If you tell him you're smoking, first advice is stop smoking, right? But
Right.
you and I, all of us know how hard it is, right? It's very,
Yeah.
very, very difficult, because when you smoke or when you vape or when you're used to a certain chemical or whatever you call it, there is an association that happens in your brain, and your brain starts linking your good feelings and everything along with the thing. So it's very, very, very hard. And that's the reason why these industries are doing well for thousands and thousands of years. So yes, if you look at it from that point of view, the difference between vapors and smokers. So it's too early to get data with regards to cardiac disease with vapors, but evidence has shown that the accumulation of cholesterol plaques, the injury to the arteries and the veins, which happen in vapors, it's much, 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 much less compared to what it would happen in a smoker. That is
Right.
that is that is something what they have found. It's too early to get data because see, smoking has got 3,000, 4,000 years of history, so they've got all the data in the world, right?
Yep.
So people have just started vaping since 2005. So we need some time, but whatever evidence we have got so far goes clearly in favor that vaping is a much more safer alternative compared to smoking.
Right. So considering this current situation and the pandemic and the position the world finds itself in, there's a quick question which everyone wants to know, and you might be a very good person to answer this. Does vaping make somebody more prone to COVID-19?
No, there's a lot of talk even on international forums whether vaping can make somebody prone to COVID-19 or not. So, see, you need to have COVID is a viral infection, and your body has got its own natural defenses. And they have these defenses are not reduced per se only by smoking or vaping, even though they say that, smoking can cause a reduction in the clearance of the mucus from your lungs and all of that. That's a different story altogether. Fighting an infection off is a function of immunity. your immunity is primarily compromised when you have other conditions which are much more dangerous, like diabetes, blood pressure, cardiac disease, kidney disease, or maybe you have an immunity disorder and all of those things. But as such, there is no correlation so far that suggests that people who are vapers have got a higher predisposition to get COVID and people who are doing this have got. It's all about a function of immunity. Vaping has not yet been proven to cause any reduction in immunity.
But
It is immunity neutral.
Right.
but Doc,
Yeah.
isn't it true that in the case of COVID, it's your overactive immune system which actually kills you?
The overactive,
I,
no, it's not that. It's so what happens is in a COVID system is ultimately the virus when it enters your blood or it enters your bloodstream, it first of all targets your lungs because your lungs have to be, properly functioning and it causes fluid accumulation in the lungs. If you're a chronic smoker, if you've been a chronic smoker for years, then there is a possibility that your lungs might be weak enough to handle the infection. There is a possibility that you might get a little bit of a higher chance of getting infection, but that's only in smokers, and especially if you have got associated conditions like asthma or you've got COPD or emphysema of the other things. But other than that, I don't think, because even I've done a lot of research on the COVID and vaping, and I've not found any evidence so far. None of my patients have come to me with COVID and vaping.
okay, and then there is some talk in the media. There is some evidence from the data, statistical data, that after they get the disease, they may be more vulnerable to severe consequences, but the entire chances of getting the disease are reduced for smokers. This is a finding which has come from the statistics of various countries where COVID has spread more, like France, China, Germany, USA. And renowned researchers like Dr. Farsalinos are actually working on this to find the reason, the causal chain, which may be protecting smokers. I would, maybe protecting is the wrong word, but making them less vulnerable to COVID in the first place.
See, there is a theory which I have been following. It is one of my colleagues at Harvard is doing this study on that also. What they suggest is people who smoke, when you smoke, right, you're inhaling a lot of chemicals, including tar, including many of these other chemicals, which actually have a tendency to coat your lungs internally. So when you have a coating which forms in the lung, which actually is supposed to be bad for you because you're not able to disassociate oxygen coming through, there is a theory that it may be forming a barrier method which may prevent the virus from crossing to the lung. That's what one of the theories suggests. It's not yet proven. I think it's too early to get into that kind of a debate because even the scientists who are doing those studies don't know about it. They just found it as an incidental finding. So even that by itself will take a lot of time for them to understand why that happened. Was there any other mechanism? Was it because of a barrier? Was it because of an immune function? Was it that the coronavirus did not like the tar and the nicotine? So it's very difficult to say why that happened right now. Maybe the coronavirus doesn't like vapors. I don't know.
Okay, and
It's so
there
rude.
is another thing which I had read somewhere, that the mucociliary transport is compromised in people who smoke, in
Yes.
smokers. So, what role would
Yes.
that play in COVID?
So one of the reasons that the mucociliary mechanisms are definitely affected in all smokers and to a very mild extent in vapors, but that has only been proven to be of any use when there is an excessive amount of mucus secretion. The cilia, they're like small hairs, which cover your entire lungs, and
Yeah.
they move in an upward movement. So their job of the cilia is to prevent any fluid from coming down. So if you have cough and if the cilia are trying to push it up, that's one of the reasons why you get a cough. Those cilia are irritated and they start pushing the cough up. So it's a normal function, but then that doesn't have any correlation with COVID as of now. It's only the the fluid in the lungs and the other immune systems that are mattering right now.
Acha, so Jaggi, you there?
Yeah, I am. I
Jackie
was
over
like,
there.
Jesus Christ, you're getting a little too
I'm going to stop everyone for a moment. But Jaggi, I don't know आपको ये पता था या नहीं, but the doc is a very renowned cardiologist, right? He's very famous in his field, and he
Yeah.
is so good that in just one visit he cured my first, second, third, fourth, and fifth heartbreak.
Dekha,
It's that
I'm certified to repair broken hearts.
No, I
Yeah,
thought that was the tagline
that's
of
your
Quick
job,
Fix,
right?
If you come, so Jaggi, if you come to my clinic, you'll see a big board repairing broken hearts since 1991. I really have that board in my clinic.
You're kidding me, no? Because I remember the one from Quick Fix that you can fix anything except broken hearts. Okay, I guess we found the answer for that.
Yeah, so I have it in my clinic. If you come to my clinic, you'll see this big board repairing broken hearts since 1991.
That's incredible, man. I mean, I used to have a sign in my office, keep smiling, the boss loves idiots. People would walk into my office and not know what to do after they saw that one. So
You have a sign behind you also right now also, right?
yeah, there's nothing there, man.
You removed.
No. Okay, hang on. There you go.
Yep, there is nothing there. Good.
What is he written on that? I don't know what's he written on that.
It says there is nothing there with an arrow pointing towards his entire collection of vape juice.
Yeah, because you're not supposed
okay,
to show
okay.
anything, right? You're not supposed to show all those things. So
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm following the letter of the law and the spirit there, So.
Yep.
Very
Over
good.
here, we'd also like to give a shout out to Rishabh Ray and Kamal Batterjee because they've been in the chat and active. And thank you guys for joining us today. And with that, we're going to take you to the next question for the evening, Doc. So before I get down to the next question, I want to say the way we do this thing is we have a basic script. 25% of the event is planned. We have a few questions ready, but 75% of it is impromptu. So all the people watching, please, if you have questions, anything which you want to say, put it in the messages, put it over there so we can read it out and keep adding it. So it keeps the show going and we know you're following us, you're interactive and you're learning something from us. So with that, Doc, I'm going to come to the second question which we have in our script, which is vaping and blood sugar, because a lot of people say vapes taste sweet, and there's a sweetness to the vape effect altogether, the vapor which you take in. So does it have an impact on blood sugar as such?
See, it all depends on how much of sugar you take into your body. Now, vaping is basically just if you look at the constitution of vape juice or e-juice or whatever you may call it, its maximum amount of it is vegetable glycerine. The other amount is propyl glycerol, and then you have the flavors, and you have the what do you call it, the nicotine. If you use nicotine, and that depends on how much strength you use. The maximum amount of sugar concentration in all of these is in the flavoring. It's neither in the glycerine, neither is it in the propylene glycol, but it's in the flavoring. So it's very minute. If you look at it, how much is distributed in a bottle, the sweetness that you get primarily is because vegetable glycerine by itself has got a slightly sweet nature to it. And these are all very, very complex carbohydrates. Now, the only place, or at least what I have done, because I've got my diabetic hypertensive patients who are on vaping, so it was important for me to check and see if vaping would increase their blood sugars. Very happy to say that all my vaping patients who have diabetes and blood pressure have not shown any variability so far, and I've got nearly about 200 to 300 patients on vape devices. Most of these patients are diabetic. Most of them are cardiac patients. I have not seen any variability in their sugars. So that made me go and check online and to see why so. I mean, if you look at it, if you eat 2 or 3 gulab jamuns, obviously you're going to get an increased sugar because that's a concentrated burst of sugar. Your body has to have that surge for it to be picked up. But if you vape, the surge is practically minimal. It's more like a flat curve that goes across your body. Even research has been shown that vaping does not cause any increase in blood sugar, so diabetics should not have a problem at all. In fact, all my diabetic patients.
Doc, a question: are rasgulla safer?
वैसे डॉक्टर मैं आपको बता दूं कि मैंने बहुत जूस बनाया है और बाकी लोग भी कैसे जूस बनाते हैं मुझे पता है. कोई वेप में चीनी नहीं डालता. We don't add sugar to our vape juices.
नहीं उसमें चीनी है ही नहीं.
We use other sweeteners, mainly sucralose, sometimes ethyl maltol or stevia, but not sucrose or fructose. Any of those sugars, these sugars will caramelize on the coil itself. So
Absolutely.
we don't use sugar.
Actually, Manish bhai, आपने बहुत important point निकाली है. This caramelization, or otherwise it's called the Maillard reaction, that usually happens on the coil itself. So, he himself knows a lot about it because I'm sure Manish has done a lot of work on juices. And he's absolutely right. So if you're using sucralose, if you're using xylitol, if you're using different kinds of sugars which don't cause any increase in sugar, then that, that also goes in favor of the fact that diabetics don't get an increase in sugar. Yeah, so I think that point is very well cleared off there.
So diabetics
So
can
that,
vape. There, you guys, you know it. The doc explained it. If
yeah,
you're diabetic,
diabetics and vape.
vape. It's okay. Nobody is stopping you from vaping because of your diabetes. Quit it for other
I mean,
reasons.
unless you drink a whole bottle of zero nicotine juice, then that's not good for you. But
Please don't. In the list, whenever we reach episode 100 of this series, we're gonna have
So
a list
we
of
have,
things where I'm saying, please don't do this. One of them is going to be, please don't drink e-juice, no matter what.
Kanav, I think that is a very important point that you discussed today, right? You brought up right now. At the end of this talk, there's going to be a whole session on what not to do, because we all know what to do. We just don't know what not to do.
Yep. Where we discover the concept of what not to do is wherever I'm speaking anything, Samrat comes to me and says, Kanav, I don't know what you're going to say, and I'm okay with whatever you're going to say. Just here's a list. Don't say these things, no matter what happens.
But you really encounter some really stupid things in practice, because see, obviously it's all a question of education and knowing. If you are trying out something new, my always advice is, if you're trying out something new which you think is not the norm, go online, ask your friends, or check somewhere on some forum whether what you're doing is right or wrong. I had a patient of mine who was advised by one of their friends to actually use a nicotine salt in a RTA device, which was catastrophic, because you're not supposed to use a nicotine salt in an RTA or an RDA device, or even a regular, the one with the coils, because each of them work on a different way. Fortunately, he asked me, he said, Dr. Saab, mere kisi ne bataya tha ki I said, please, because you're giving a sudden increase of nicotine, that can be a problem for the patient. So you have to be very careful with these things. Don't experiment, just follow the norm and they should be fine.
Right. That's guys, don't do anything creative, at least in this field. In other fields, we don't know what you're doing in your bedrooms, but here be less creative.
Doc, Gagandeep Singh Sethi is asking, does nicotine kill brain cells?
Nicotine doesn't kill brain cells. Nicotine is a stimulant, right? So what it does is excites the brain cells. It's like coffee. It attaches to a receptor in the brain and then lights up the brain. Okay, so it's like putting a switch on. The switch will not kill the bulb. Excessive means keeping that switch on for too long time can cause heating of those switches. So you have to be careful on the quantity of the nicotine that you use per day. Your target should not be to increase your nicotine and be a world champion in how much of nicotine you consumed in a day. Your target should be, okay, I know here I am and I need to come down to a level. It's always coming down. It's never going up. Zindagi mein upar tarakki karo, lekin nicotine mein come down. It's always recommended to come down one step at a time. Aap bhi khush, brain cell bhi khush, BV bhi khush. Only person not happy will be the nicotine juice manufacturer.
Right.
So I think, so yeah, it does affect the brain. Nicotine is a stimulant. It will stimulate not only your brain, it will stimulate your muscle, it will stimulate your heart, it will stimulate your nerves, it will stimulate practically every organ in the body. That's something you should be aware
of. We shall elaborate on that after this this live stream is over.
Yeah, we should do that.
I have questions, a lot of them. But like after the stream, questions. On stream, we have to be appropriate. I've been told by Samrat several times.
Kanav, you'll start reminding me of that movie in which kaun tha wo Paresh Rawal with one big question mark on his head, na? Kya tha?
Yeah, you even just call me the Riddler from Batman. They've unfortunately
the Riddler. I think Paresh Rawal had a question mark on his head and used to ask so many questions.
So one of our viewers, Biresh from Mumbai, he has a question. He gets whizzing cough sometimes only while vaping, and coughs every time in the morning. Many a times internal cough loosens up. Could you put this across to the doc? Thanks, I've put it across to your doc.
Yeah, so this could mean that he's having an allergic reaction.
Okay.
Either that, because when you get a sudden wheeze, which increases because of taking a certain product, and if you have noticed an association with that product, that means there is a possibility that you could be having an allergy either to one of the products, a combination of the products, and you need to get yourself evaluated to see if there is a history of any asthma or something in your family, and you need to go and see your doctor. So there's an old saying in English. If you go to the Royal College of Physicians in Edinburgh, as soon as you walk inside, there's a big board on the screen there. These are called 4 laws of Loeb. Okay, so you have to follow the 4 laws of Loeb. What are the 4 laws? If what you're doing is working, keep doing it.
Okay.
If what you're doing is not working, stop doing it.
Okay.
If you don't know what to do, don't do anything at all. And the last one, whatever you do, never let a surgeon get your patient. Okay? So the first thing you need to do, the guy who asked this question from Mumbai, first thing you need to do is, if you're getting these repeated episodes with vaping, now it's very common. I have got 3 or 4 patients who are extremely allergic to cigarette smoke. So obviously these patients have never tried smoking. So allergies can have no boundaries. You can have allergy to anything. If you are finding that vaping is causing you a problem with your breathlessness, it is very important. Go to your doctor, speak to them. They will advise a certain test. They'll check you for your immunity. They'll check you for your allergy response. They'll check you for your lung function and everything. And then they'll tell you whether you're prone for allergies or not. So that is something which you need to be careful of, and don't expose yourself to the allergen. And that's something which is important.
Right. So in the previous part, you explained how, nicotine can stimulate almost everything. Somebody wants to know if vaping can stimulate the secretion of insulin. What a boring question to ask when somebody says it stimulates everything, but nonetheless, it's a question being asked.
See, either this question is a very intelligent one, or somebody is busy searching on Google. Because whenever I give a live telecast for my medical topics, I've got a lot of doctors sitting in the background and searching what question मारो इसको कौन सा question मार के इसका bamboo उड़ा दे हम लोग. So this is one of those questions. So insulin is a function of sugar in your blood, right? Your body will automatically increase insulin when there is a high amount of sugar, because your body has got sensors inside for sugar. Nicotine has shown certain response in insulin cells only in laboratories and in rats and in animals and in certain very, 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 very special cases, but not yet so far. There has been no study that has been done so far on humans to see the release of nicotine on insulin levels. Nicotine does cause a little bit of increased hormones, like the cortisol levels can increase. These can invariably over a period of time lead to a slight increase in insulin, but other than that, it should not cause any problem. Otherwise, all people who are taking nicotine, I've got patients who are smoking 30-40 packs of cigarettes, not 30, maybe about 2 or 3 packs of cigarettes a day. They would all come down with low sugar, so they don't. So it very clearly points that insulin and nicotine don't have a relationship.
With that there's a question related to what you just said. So a lot of these studies are done on rats. A lot of nicotine studies are done on rats. Now, what in your view is how much impact or what relevance they have to humans? Moderate, less moderate, useless? Where would you put them on that scale?
So usually when you do a rat study, the first studies that is usually done on rats, because nobody likes rats, right? So they first tried out with the rats. Inko bakra bana dete. They try with the rats.
My name is Sam Rat, by the way. So
some rat, na yeah. So the Hindi translation would be koi chua. So the transition in clinical trials is rats, then they do rabbits, but now rabbits people have banned because of a lot of problems. Then they do monkeys, and then they do humans. But usually over all the studies that have been done, whatever works for the rats and what usually has the same relationship to the human beings. So there is not much of a huge change. It's just safety protocols that people follow. They wouldn't want to go and study straight away on a human, straight away. So yeah.
Doc, on that note, you're getting a lot of love from the community who's watching right now. They're saying, thank you so much. I love the way you're explaining, and you're a very good orator. This is by Pradeep and Kuldeep. So kudos to you.
I would ask them all to go at 10 o'clock and light one candle in the window.
We shall do it. But guys,
or maybe even better, all of us can go out at 10 o'clock and start vaping outside the window.
Yes, we can do that too. But Jaggi, speaking about the study on rats, did you not recently send me an explanation that a study found that rats mein sabse bada cause of cancer is human trials on rats, the medical studies?
Yeah. Yes, these are some of the incredible findings that that come up from time to time. That the highest cause of cancer in rats is research on cancer in rats and stuff like that.
Yeah, the experimentation is bad. Coming back to what we said a little while, guys, don't experiment here.
Exactly, and but
Absolutely,
Doc, bats are
absolutely.
not included in these experiments, right? I mean, China, perhaps, I don't know.
I don't know. See, the problem is, I don't know how many other viewers out there have got a fig tree next to their house, but I've got a wild fig tree growing next to my house, and every night there are like 40, 50 bats come hanging out there. So I mean, you are free to do whatever your neighborhood and your environment allows you.
Doctor, this is
Only
how
thing
the
is,
Batman story started. He had a tree, a cave with a lot of bats in his, property and everything.
oh, one thing is very much recommended is I have had a few people. You won't believe the questions I've got in my clinic or rather on my online forum is that some of the people have actually asked me, can I give e-juice to my pet? And this is a question I've got. Okay, this is not something which is just a concoction in my brain. Please do not use e-juice on animals because first of all the SPCA will come and kick your ass. The second thing is the animal might have okay, the second thing is that your animal who you love so much may not be, because I myself have a pet at home. I have a pet African grey. I won't even vape in the room with my parrot because it's not recommended, because these animals have got a very sensitive lung system compared to yours and mine. So if you have a pet, if you have an animal at home, recommendation is, if you do have to vape, even if you vape, smoking to not allowed anyways with pets around. But if you have a pet at home, be kind to the pet because he didn't sign up to vape or smoke. You did. So you please keep your windows open and you can vape outside the windows. Make sure your pet doesn't have access to e-juice, because dogs especially have been known to chew e-juice bottles, swallow them, and unfortunately die. Dogs and cats both. So be careful where you store your e-juice. Just like children, these animals don't use their mind, and you can have a poisoning on your hand with the animal. So that's something which I'm glad that point came up there.
डॉक्टर जानवर तो कम लोगों के घरों में है लेकिन बच्चे सबके घरों में है तो उनके लिए कोई खास मैसेज दीजिए
For children, nicotine juice
Yes.
can be fatal. Okay, because their bodies are very sensitive to nicotine. That is why we don't use nicotine in children at all, even as a medication, until the age of 15 or 16. So that is the reason why all your e-juices should be in a tamper-proof, child-proof bottle. Never, ever, ever, ever keep your e-juice in a format which is accessible. Have a separate cupboard with a lock and key. That is what you should do as a responsible parent, because for a child, he doesn't know whether it's e-juice or not. He might just take and gulp half a bottle of that mango milkshake flavor that you have lying there. Might just be the last thing your child has. So you have to be extremely careful. Sensitize your child. First of all, try not to vape in front of your child, because that's giving a wrong signal to your child. But e-juices are very, very common. E-juice poisonings among children have happened a lot in the West. It's not yet come to light in India because maybe we have a smaller population of vapors. But if you just do a Google random search, you'll find that nicotine poisoning in children, number one reason was e-juice. Second number one cause of nicotine poisoning in children was chewing gum. People thought it was a regular chewing gum. So that's something which is very important with regards to children. Make sure your juices are kept away from them.
So while we are
That is
on
a good
this
point. Yeah.
No,
topic,
Kanav,
Doc,
Kanav,
yes, Jaggi.
now you finally know why you were not able to open those bottles, right? Those are child-proof bottles.
Jaggi,
It's
Jaggi, I'm
But
trying
but
really
Jaggi,
hard to grow up. Stop calling me a child now.
but Jackie, if I remember the last time we had met or had a conversation, I think one Mr. Kanav Kumar had about 25 liters of something on, and I think he was using it with one of those AquaGuard filters to remove the juice, right? If you remember, somebody had claimed to have a lot of juice within a huge Syntex tank or something.
I'm
exactly,
not.
yeah.
I'm not allowed to show it anymore, Doc. I'm not allowed to
Yeah.
show.
I know
No,
at one time, no. So
no,
But yeah, none for
that kind
selling,
of
of
changed
course.
his name. Yeah, no, that kind of changed his name, incidentally.
Yeah.
no, not
Yeah,
this guy, not this guy. There was some other Kanav.
yeah, there was another guy. Yeah,
Yeah, there was another guy. Yeah, this big syntax tank full of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
You'd
And
have a
one
bath with it
you
as
like.
well. Yeah.
I also
Oh,
have in my defense a poster which says there is nothing here next to it. In the bottom. Evidently that works. As long as you have a paper in which you've written it and stuck it there, it works. It doesn't count.
right,
Yeah.
right. Oh
No, but
God.
while we were on the topic, Doc, what are your thoughts and insights on passive vaping? Because see, I'm a vapor, and quite often there are people around me who do not vape.
Right.
So, like, there's some people who smoke, some who don't smoke, and passive smoking is known to be a very bad thing. And people who smoke around non-smokers get a lot of heat for it. But what would you say about vaping and passive vaping?
Passive vaping contains the same disclaimer as that for regular smoking, 95% safe. It should, in fact, there are some studies which was, I don't look at, I don't think those studies should actually be quoted here, but then they said that it's even safe in the presence of children and animals, which I don't want to set a precedent. I would rather say don't smoke in front of children and animals, not because of the vaping or the passive smoking part of it, but also because of an ethical part, right? But that being said, passive smoking has got practically 98 to 99% safety factor. We had one caller who had developed breathlessness every time he vaped, right? Now, this
Yeah.
same can hold true for other people who inhale passive smoke and can also develop allergy reactions, especially documented. Passive smoking side effects have included rashness of the eyes and rashness of the throat and itching of the skin. This is because of contact with the vapor. So this what we call in medical terminology as contact dermatitis or contact conjunctivitis. So this has been seen in very few people, but it is possible. Vaping causes a lot of vapor. So what you absorb, what you take inside when you inhale on a vape device, you're taking in a huge amount of uh, air along with the vape juice, which is aerosolized. The question has always been asked is why so much smoke comes out. This is related to a theory called of expansion of gases theory. So when you inhale that liquid inside, inhale that minute amount of liquid inside, it goes inside. There's maybe about 2 to 5% of absorption. The remaining aerosolized spray is exhaled out, and that expands as it comes into the atmosphere. That's why you get this huge stream of smoke that comes out. It's expansion of gases. But these gases can actually have a kind of an irritant. Somebody might be allergic to glycerine, somebody might be allergic to maybe the flavoring, somebody might be allergic to nicotine itself. So that is one of the few things that we suggest to passive smoking. So far, as of yet, there is a direct relationship between cancer and passive smoking for cigarettes. Okay, for
Okay.
the regular tobacco-based smoke, there is definite evidence that passive smokers also have a high risk of getting cancers. That risk of cancer with vaping has not yet been established. Neither have they found much evidence for that. So
Right.
that is something which is positive.
Okay. That's
See,
great.
yeah.
But
So
other than the medical aspect of it, which the doc has explained very nicely, Dhaval, if I can have your eat your mind for 2 minutes.
Right.
We do generally, as AVI, also recommend that we have some etiquettes when we are, vaping around people who don't vape.
Yeah.
Correct? You want to elaborate on that for everyone?
Yeah, sure. So what I follow and I suggest people to do is not to blow clouds in their face or high in the sky. You can probably blow clouds or exhale uh, towards the floor. If somebody is not smoking or somebody hasn't smoked, don't ask them to vape. Uh, and generally not share vape devices if you can, especially in the light of the recent COVID situation, because that might increase chances of transmission. Not necessarily the virus, but there could be other things that could be transmitted when you share devices.
Right. Thank you, Dhaval, for that. Dr. Kushal Appa would also, Kushal Appa, if I'm getting the name right. I'm so sorry if I got your name wrong, sir. But he wants to know if 30 to 50 mg salt nicks are safe for vapors, because, a lot of people do use salt nick. Joule is one of those things which is very famous and unfamous at the same time, and infamous is the correct word, I believe. So with that in mind, 30 to 50 mg salt nicks, are they safe for vapors?
See, it all depends on how much you've been used to. If you're coming to 30 to 40 milligrams of salt, Nick, I must first of all congratulate you, because that that is, if I was to whip 30 40, I would have been now lying on the floor right now. I incidentally I vape at zero point 0.5 now. I started with 6, moved to 4, then moved to 3, then moved to 2, then 1, and now I'm at zero point 0.5 milligram per ml. Of course, I only use RTS. I don't use salt mix. 30 to 40 milligram of salt nick is high. If you're comfortable with that and it's not causing any side effects for you, then that's good. But with that amount of salt nick, you're looking at a lot of interaction of this nicotine with your brain, of course with the other amount of your other part of your body as well. A recommendation, what if you were my patient, or if anyone came to me and said I'm vaping 30 milligrams or 40 milligrams of nick, my recommendation for you very clearly would be come down to a level which is usually, the norm, what everybody would explain. Because see, as a doctor, I would look at health. So I would like you to, I would like people to evaluate themselves and come to a point which is, you're tapering down to a point. One pod of joule, one pod of joule is equivalent to a 120 pack cigarette, right? So
Right.
that's the amount of nicotine that you're getting from one pod of joule. So if you're using one pod of joule per day, that means you're technically consuming equivalent amount of 120 pack cigarette per day. Nicotine value I'm talking about. Target with all vaping has always been to reduce dosage or reduce it or titrate it down to a level where your body is able to adjust in steps. This is not possible with cigarettes. It's not possible because you can't ask a person who's smoking 20 cigarettes a day to suddenly start smoking one. He's going to go mad. Okay.
Right.
But with vaping, what happens is you have other sensory parts coming in also. You're getting smoke, you're getting a flavor. So this adds to the sensory input your brain is getting. Your brain is very easy to confuse. Okay. It's very easy to fool. You have two components of your brain. You have the conscious mind, you have the subconscious mind. Your conscious mind and your subconscious mind are connected to each other. You've been, so if I take a cigarette and I smoke, it's not only the cigarette, it's also the smoke, it's the entire, the entire environment that you have created, or the ambience that happens along with smoking, that also helps you in quitting smoking. Why patches and why chewing gums and all these other aids don't help as much, which I'm sure many of you know, it's just got a 7% success, is because we are used to the smoke. So use it to your advantage by reducing your nicotine and still getting that smoke. Your brain is very easy to fool in these conditions. It's going to accept that smoke hai, I'm getting my nicotine condition. So recommendations, if you're doing 30, 40 milligrams, in my opinion, that is high. But if you've been a chronic smoker for years and smoking multiple packets of cigarettes, at least you've taken the first step and you've done the safer alternative. That's good, and I appreciate that. Take a plan to reduce it down to maybe about 10, or maybe about 6, or maybe about 3 in over a period of 1 to 1.5 years. That should be your strategy, because nicotine has been known to cause cardiac issues because it's a stimulant. Too much of a stimulant can also cause an excessive excitation of your nervous system, can affect your your judgment. It can affect your thought process. It can affect anything at all, especially with the rhythm of your heart, with the rhythm of your muscles. It causes an effect. You may think that there's no effect because you've got used to it. So the target would be to reduce. That's the target. That's what I tell all my patients. Start with
Right.
this and then start reducing. To you, best solution is the day you reach to zero nick. That is the best solution, but ultimately at
Right.
the end of the day, vape as an alternative to reduce harm, not to induce harm. So that
So
should be a.
over here,
It is
Doc.
also important to add here that high strength juices should only be used in low power devices which are made for such juices. Do not use them in RTAs, RDAs, and other sub-ohm devices, because that will produce too much vapor and that will overwhelm your senses. Like Doc said, don't give your body the chance to react adversely. It's a stimulant. Don't overstimulate your body. So use them in low power devices which are made for high strength liquids.
राइट, आई कंप्लीटली एग्री मनीष भाई, व्हाट यू सेड इज एब्सोल्युटली, आपने सही बात बोला है। बहुत, ये तो बहुत बड़ी बात कह दी आपने। दैट इज एब्सोल्युटली इंपॉर्टेंट।
But Doc, when you
सो
say that your mind is very easy to fool, Are you talking about my mind or like in general?
See, the
Kanav, you don't
guilty,
even speak in the
the
equation.
guilty speak, the guilty people speak up first. So I don't know, yeah.
But Doc, there's one question. Since most people vaping might have switched over from smoking, does our lung and cilia clean out on its own, or the damage done is not recoverable? I'm not sure of these words. I'm reading them out, but
I
I'm
think I got
guessing you
what you
figured
said.
out
So
what
one,
the question is.
so if you have been smoking for more than 5 years, whatever lung damage has happened to you is usually considered permanent. But the fact is that if you have considered to vaping, then you have put a stop to that process, and you're actually now not anymore causing any active damage. All smokers above the age of 5, well, I mean talking about smoking years, okay, if you've smoked for more than 5 years, you need to do at least one chest x-ray or CT scan once in 2 years. It's recommended all over the world, but that's not something to be worried about. Vaping does not reduce any of the side effects that has happened because of smoking. What reduces the side effects that has happened in your body because of smoking is done by your body's immune system. Once you stop injuring that particular part of your lung, your body's immune system is very, very capable to cause that damage. Now, if you look at the coronavirus situation, everybody knows that all over India, there's a complete lockdown and the entire industry is off. There's no cars on the road, pollution is off, and everything is off. But all of a sudden, what you're looking at all over the world is the environment is changing. The environment has become clearer. There is a healing taking place. The ozone layer is healing up. You can see right now, sitting from my house, I can see buildings I could never see before. I can look into my neighbor's house and see that wonderful beautiful looking woman I could never see before. So things have started changing. The same way your body has got an ability to adapt and recover processes that have happened. But if there is something called as lung fibrosis that cannot be reversed, other than that, most of the processes the body is able to take care over a period of time. That is, and one more question. I think Kanav, somebody had asked me a long time back. I think I mentioned it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I mentioned it or not. I had somebody who asked me a very interesting question. डॉक्टर साहब मैं गाड़ी में बैठ के वेप करता हूँ एंड ही
Yeah.
आस्क्ड मी दिस हिंदी मैं गाड़ी में बैठ के रोज मैं काम पे जा रहा हूँ गाड़ी चलाता हूँ तो मैं गाड़ी में बैठ के वेप कर रहा हूँ तो मैंने देखा कि कुछ टाइम के बाद में मेरे ग्लास के सामने वहां पे फिल्म आता है
Huh.
okay and sometimes some people get a film in front of their laptop because it's see what you vape that's a vapor right so it collects as a film so he wanted to know whether this film is happening inside his lung and causing damage in his lung.
Right.
So that was a very valid question. Now, all these
Yes.
films, whatever happens, is just glycerine or vegetable glycerol or it's propylene glycerol. These are digestible in your lung. So when it goes inside your lung, digest it like as if it's any other part of me. Of it's a complex sugar. That's what it is. So it's just absorbed into your body. Don't worry about those films.
Right.
So I
And
have a question here. So, Doc, you mentioned that there would be some recovery when you stop smoking, right? So, are there any measures we can take? And I would think many of us, or most of us, would be ex-smokers. So, do you have any recommendations that we can increase this recovery by doing some certain things, or uh, is there we can increase our cardio function in
Yeah.
some manner?
So what you can do is one of the things is what we recommend is something called as spirometry. So if you don't spirometry, you get these small devices in any pharmacy where you can blow and there's a ball which goes up and down. So these improve your lung function, improve your lung to expand. If you are, too lazy to go to the pharmacy and buy a small spirometry device costing 100, 200 rupees, the cheaper alternative is to buy a pack of balloons and blow at least 5 balloons every day. So that helps you increase your lung capacity. Secondly, there are a lot of over-the-counter medications like N-acetylcysteine, which is an over-the-counter medication. N-acetylcysteine causes release of the mucus from your lungs. It's available all over the uh, medical counters as an OTC. It comes as a small tablet, which is about a 50 paise coin, like a tablet. You just drop it in a glass of water. It becomes like an effervescent, like a soda. You just drink that, and then it releases the mucus which is stuck into your lungs, and it helps you to cough it out.
Okay.
Because like Manish had mentioned earlier, that the ciliary action is impaired in smoking, right? So
Right.
when the ciliary action is impaired in a smoker, the the hair in the lungs, the cilia is another word for the hair.
Right.
The hair in the lungs is not able to push the mucus up. So you need to break that mucus away from the wall. So this N-acetylcysteine helps into releasing that. So you can take that once or twice a week for about 3 to 4 months. That should sort it out.
Right. And
Or you
going
can just go to any doctor. He'll tell you.
going to the gym would also be helpful, or
Go,
working out, cycling, or whatnot.
Hey, so on this, doc, there's a
I
proper another question which I'd like to ask. I'm so sorry, but because considering all vapors and smokers and ex-smokers and everyone over here, what are your recommended steps, paths, suggestions, or anything such that which we should follow to improve our cardio metabolism? Can you give us the full summary of
first of all,
everything?
like yeah. So first of all, like I mentioned, there was an interesting thing which I noticed is why do people switch to e-cigarettes? And I had about 8 points which I was just talking to some people about. So there were 8 points which I found why people switch to vaping. Okay, let's say you're a smoker, and what are these 8 reasons why you want to switch to vaping? And it was very interesting because one of them was, see, the first one is you want it as an alternative to smoking, right? Everybody wants to give up this bad habit which people say, घर में माँ बहन सब लोग चिल्लाने लगते हैं, बीवी चिल्ला रही है, बच्चे चिल्ला रहे हैं, आजू बाजू सब लोग चिल्ला रहे हैं. You want to give up the smoking, you want something good. So one is alternative to smoking. One of the reasons why people actually try e-cigarettes and not for the reason of giving up smoking is to do smoke tricks. Okay, I had a patient of mine who was a smoker. He refused to give up smoking. Okay, he's telling me, Doctor Saab, mujhe vaping karna hai. I said, "Arey, very good, good. I'm happy for you. Why did you make this choice?" He's saying, "Oh, मैंने video देखा. There is a lot of vaping tricks. I want to do those rings and balls and all that nonsense, and I want to." So I found that that one reason why people actually start vaping. Another reason was people want to quit smoking completely. So I have had patients who have switched directly from 5 to 10 to 20 cigarettes per day directly onto a zero nicotine juice. Okay, because for them it was the smoke that really helped them. So different strokes for different folks. I mean, what may work for Tom may not work for Harry, but you have to evaluate and see what you want to do. Another reason for giving up smoking was friends are doing it. मेरे सारे दोस्त कर रहे हैं, so even I want to start vaping. This was one reason I noticed. Then one reason which I don't recommend at all why people should vape, and this is especially true for young vapers, is to look cool. I have seen enough parents who have come to me who are my patients coming in asking me that my son has just started smoking, kabhi zindagi mein cigarette piya nahi, abhi vape kar raha hai, is it safe or not? So children, and I wouldn't say children, I'm saying youth, young people should be extremely aware that vaping is not to be used for any recreational purpose. Vaping is meant for people who are smokers and are trying to find a safer alternative. We are not giving you something here as an iPhone for you to look cool. It's not cool. Okay, only a smoker knows how difficult it is. Reasons why people get into smoking, we are not going to go there. We don't want to know who shot the sheriff. What we want to know is vaping is meant for people who have been smokers who want a safer alternative. Vaping is never meant for people to experiment for the first time. Vaping is never meant for young children. Vaping is never meant as a way to look cool. And this has to be understood very, 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 very clearly. So, this being said, another reason why people have started vaping is because I have heard of a lot of people get relief when they see clouds of smoke. Okay, there's a lot of stress relief some people get with a lot of clouds of smoke, me being one of them. So when I see lots of clouds, I think I'm in Kulu Manali in my room. So that's a different situation altogether. And for fun, and the last reason I've seen why people actually start vaping is because they wanted something that tastes good. Somebody was really attracted by all the different flavors. He's a smoker and he moved to vaping because he loved the different varieties of flavor. So that being said, vaping, to answer your question, Pranav, vaping, some few rules and do's and don'ts. Use vaping as an opportunity to reduce the amount of nicotine you would normally consume. Okay, your target should always be, as a vapor, as a new vapor, as an old vapor, or wherever you are in your vape history, your target should always be, can I reduce my nicotine content? And Kanav, stop smiling there.
I'm so sorry. But, oh, you can see me. Of course, you can see me. I forgot. You can still see me.
Of
I
course,
keep checking
of
if
course,
you're
I can
visible
see
on the
you.
screen or not, but yeah, my bad.
You're smiling. You're smiling like a cat that caught the mouse.
No, no. I have a simple question, Doc. Tom and Harry, you mentioned two people, but they had one more friend. What was his name?
Tom, Dick, and Harry, man.
Yeah, I
But
wanted to get
we
you
are
to say
not.
that.
But we are not going to talk about Dick today.
Excellent, lovely. I'm so glad we're not. No, but Doc, coming back to the question was, what can people do to recover their lost health and the damage which they've done to their lungs by smoking or such for the past couple of years? How do they recover their chronic health? If I'm using the
Sorry.
words correct.
Yeah. The first thing is never go back to smoking. That is the first thing you can do, right? Never go back to smoking, because then you're just going back into the same hole which you dug earlier. Never go back to smoking. You're with a safer alternative. Continue using that till something safer comes along. Right now, so vaping is the safest alternative to smoking that you can find. Okay. After that, you have to do lung exercises. Like I said, spirometry is one of the things. Then there is another condition. What you can do is you can take some OTCs to improve your immune function. Definitely exercise every day. Half of these things which I'm telling you, nobody will do, and still it's my job to tell you that
No, you're doing it
first of
right.
all, don't go back to smoking. Continue continue vaping. Try reducing your nicotine content. Do lung exercises like spirometry, shirodhara, all of these ayurvedic exercises which help you in breathing and inhaling, exhaling, all help. And third is taking some OTCs or over the counters to improve your immune health. Of course, if you have diabetes, blood pressure, and all these other complications, go to your doctor and get all those sorted out, because you also need to get those things sorted along with this. I mean, it's very simple, yeah.
Right. So, Doc, with that, we have a lot more questions which we want to ask you, and the people are still throwing in more questions, and it's becoming a big pile of questions. So, guys, we're going to have Doc joining us again soon. He's been very nice towards AVI. He's been actively helping us whenever he can. He's an extremely busy person. We've been blessed that he had time today for us, but he will be back again in the future. So if your question is not asked today, please forgive us. But in the next session, whenever we can have him, he will answer those questions. And with that, Doc, we're going to start building towards closing the show for the day. Unless you have some finishing thoughts which you want to add, or if there's something which you think must be mentioned today which has not been.
No, I think most of the points have been covered. Which just reminds me of one thing, is that one of my patients, a funny anecdote happened, that one of my patients decided to use the nicotine e-juice as hair oil because someone told him that nicotine helps hair growth. So please don't do that.
Guys, I
I
can't
had
lay
some
enough
really
stress on this. Please
No,
experiment
no.
less with these things.
Okay.
These are not
Samrat,
Is that
experiments which
is
you do
that
on yourself.
is that
Samrat,
why you
stop
have a long
smiling.
beard?
No, I haven't used nicotine on my beard, but sometimes the I don't know, maybe the vape juice must be getting on my
Maybe
beard,
that's why
but
he asked you that question.
no. Okay.
I
Proof
had
that
such.
proof that e-juice doesn't help hair growth is look at Samrat, right? You know.
Yeah,
I'm so glad,
yeah.
Jaggi, you said it. I
Homecoming.
couldn't.
On the same note, Doc, since you're talking about hair growth, since you said it is a stimulant, does it help in ED?
In ED, no. Actually, in so just for those people who do not know what is ED, ED is erectile.
Okay, now I got it.
So, so like with all stimulants, in small doses, it doesn't cause much problem, but in larger doses, it can cause erectile dysfunction. So Manish's question was actually ED stands for erectile dysfunction. That is a very, very important component, because most of the vapors or smokers are usually tend to be younger people. By the time you have been 20, 30 years old, smoking, the ED doesn't matter at all, because, it just doesn't matter at all. So as a young person, you want to make sure that you don't enter up into erectile dysfunction. That also answers the question that too much of anything is bad. If you look at alcohol, it's very controversial, but alcohol as a chemical, as a drug, okay, now please understand that alcohol is classified as a drug when you look at medicine from a medical point of view. So is nicotine. They're considered as drugs. Now, if you look at alcohol in small quantities, alcohol works as a stimulant. So if you take a little bit of alcohol, it helps as a stimulant. It stimulates your system. It stimulates your neuroendocrine system. It stimulates a lot of components in your body. But when you cross a certain level in alcohol, its role switches. It becomes something totally different. So it changes from a stimulant to becoming a depressant. So where it was causing a point of good feeling, when you cross a certain level, it starts creating negative feelings, and it causes a suppression of the body system. That's why you find many of these people who drink too much, they suddenly become so emotional, they start crying, they start, all the Rona, Dhona. You've seen all these Hindi pictures, right? Amitabh Bachchan screaming and crying and all that. So these are two faces of the same coin. Same with nicotine. Nicotine has been shown to have stimulatory effects up to a certain level. When you cross that level, any drug, even if it's paracetamol or any drug for that matter of fact, will always have adverse and side effects. That's the reason why we always try to limit it within the normal recommended usage. And that's where that person who also asked me the question about 30 milligrams of nicotine and 40 milligrams of nicotine in a Nick salt, those are very high levels. Question is to try to reduce it. But Manish, yes, it does. In high doses, nicotine can cause erectile dysfunction. In high doses, nicotine can cause loss of libido. So that is something which a good point you raised.
I have two questions, Doc. One is, as a medical professional, how do you see the vape ban which has come in India? And the second question is, what would you like to say to other medical professionals who are, tobacco is a hugely prevalent thing in our society and every single doctor faces it. So what would you say to them?
Looking at it, I would say that whatever scientific study has been done does not say that vaping is equal to or worse than cigarettes, right? Whatever the studies that have been done so far have always suggested that vaping has been considered a safer alternative to smoking. As a medical person, it doesn't make sense to me, but as we are all citizens of the country, we have to accept the law of the land. But it doesn't make sense to me that something which is less harmful than something which is more harmful, whereas the one which is more harmful should have been banned in the first place. I think it will take some time for these people to get to the point to accept that fact. And I think they also look at the West. I think there's a lot of studies in the West that have shown that there's a lot of safety. Regulation is very important in this industry, because if you're not going to legalize it, it's going to go unregulated, it's going to go underground, and people are going to try to source their own kind of solutions underground, which will cause more harm than anything else. My suggestion would always be to consider this as a regulated product, use it as a medicinal device, and allow doctors to prescribe it just as they would give a patient to nicotine lozenges or nicotine patches and all those things. So I think that's something which they really need to consider. With regards to medical professional, I always never accept what is told to me until I read it myself. I don't believe anybody. There are many research studies, and all my medical professional friends also know that many of the research studies are biased. Many of the research studies that are done are funded by agencies, which can cause you to have a biased statement. And it's not new, it's been there from thousands of years. Do your own findings, do your own research findings. You have access to journals, you have access to all the clinical resources. Find peer reviewed articles which will tell you that whether these are the real studies or not. Make up your own mind. Don't follow what media has told you, or this one has told you, or that one has told you, because each of us have got our own interpretation thing. So I would tell all doctors here, if there are anyone here or any medical, my message to medical professionals is, my research has shown me that vaping has been proven to be 90 to 95% safer than cigarette. I follow it. I tell my patients to follow it, because that's the best solution I can give to them. So yeah, so that is the message I would give to the medical community.
Thank you. Thank you. That was quite elaborate. Thank you.
Yeah, that was quite good. So, are we? If you want, are we good to start proceeding towards closing
Yeah.
this?
Do you have an ending speech or something? I mean, you've been building up to it for a while.
No,
So let us know.
Kanav is busy reading his vote of thanks over there.
I got no vote of thanks. It's just fun. Hey, but Doc, we had a slight plan. We had some rapid fire questions for you before we closed. Questions which just give us a is it true or is it false kind of an answer. Okay.
Do I get points for them?
If you want, I'll get a cup printed with my photo and send courier it to you also in the end if you win the round.
With your photo, at least some acha photo dalo yaar.
we can get Samrat if you prefer that.
I don't want that to be Socrates cup, yaar. You just put some nice photo.
I'll go online and find some. You send me a photo of that good-looking neighbor of yours. You were talking about whom you can see. I'll get that.
Your husband will come and take that cup away, yaar. Aisa mat karna.
So, theek hai. Ajay, but we're going to come down to the myth or fact section, okay? So,
Yeah,
increase in LDL levels due to vaping. Is it a myth or a fact?
It's a myth.
Okay. Triglycerides increase due to vaping. Is it a myth or a fact?
It's a myth. Triglycerides is directly controlled to genetics.
Okay. Cholesterol increases due to vaping. Myth or a fact?
Myth.
Kanav is extremely intelligent. Is it a myth or a fact?
The jury is out on that one.
The jury's still out. I'll take that in my favor and I'll be really happy with what I got. Jaggi, where you at, man? Why are you so silent today?
I don't know. This was going on between you and Doc, and I muted myself because
Yeah,
once in a while I'd burst
Doc,
out laughing,
I don't know whether you know this or not, Doc, but on the first Funvocacy stream which we did, Jaggi decided to, be a full-on lion and, crack a lot of jokes and say a lot of crazy things and everything and all. And then we got a message in the chat saying, Jaggi, I'm here, I'm watching. That was Jaggi's wife. After that, we've never had the same Jaggi in a live stream ever again.
I had helmets and all that, man. I mean, I started wearing helmets when I walk out of my basement now because of that.
Well, you got hit on your head or something, or what?
No. Always be careful, Doc. Both things can get thrown at you. So have a full-on face guard, and then prepare yourself for the worst. Then you're always better off. No, but Doc,
that's why I'm safe here.
Yeah, I know. Lucky bum. Anyway.
There, Jaggi, helmet time.
No, but Doc, you were saying that you didn't kill the sheriff, right? But I didn't kill the deputy either, right? So that's
we're in the same boat.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
But Kanav, where did you get? You only gave me 3 rapid fire questions. Uske baad mein kya ho gaya?
Yeah, Doc. You told me that my mind is very easy to confuse.
I think your gun lost its bullets.
Doc, ऐसे नहीं यार, मतलब this is live, man. Doc, ऐसे नहीं खींच सकता.
I was thinking of some rapid fire, कोई machine gun fire हुई है, push 3 question मार दिया. What happened here?
We had a rule that we can't let you elaborate on everything. Some things have to be precise. For example, I have a next question for you. Asthma patients, should they vape? Yes or no?
So that all depends. Asthma patients technically no. Okay, because they can have allergic reactions. If you have a lung condition, then you should be careful. If you get aggravations, because then that would be a little bit of a serious problem. So right. I would not recommend asthma patients to. If they do, then not an RDA, maybe just a salt nick device.
Yes,
but
because
that's given a choice between smoking and vaping for asthma patients.
Definitely vaping.
Key information.
I think there is no situation in which smoking is better than vaping. What do you say, Doc?
Yeah, there's no situation. I mean, you're talking about which is worse, a growling dog or a small baby puppy. I mean, there's a big difference between the two of them. You'd always go with a small little puppy compared to the growling dog. I mean, I wouldn't do that. So it works for everything.
Next on the rapid fire, Doc. Yeah, sorry. Yes.
Bolo. I'm waiting for your rapid fire.
So next on the rapid fire, again, without elaborating, you want to keep this short because we all know the answer, but some people need to hear it from a renowned doctor. Nicotine and pregnancy. Is it
no
fine
risk
or not?
Yes, as of today, there is no risk that is associated.
There's no risk associated with?
with nicotine and pregnancy as of today. But once again, quantity is what is something you need to be careful about. You can't afford to just keep on sitting and vaping because you're pregnant. So nicotine in very, very small amounts, very, very small, if required,
Okay. And you know,
but no
India
risks are
is
associated.
But that
right.
wouldn't that be damaging to the baby in some cases? Or
That's why they say the quantity that is amount that the quantity that is required, because if there are many patients in the US and in Europe who are smokers, and these people usually are very heavy smokers. They start these people on nicotine patches. They put these people on nicotine chewing gums because for the baby the most damaging factor that happens is the nitrosamines, the other carboxylamines which happen in these the other things which are absorbed into the body which damage the baby more. So nicotine by as such. So once again, in pregnancy, if you want to smoke, or I mean not smoke, if you want to vape, you have to speak with your gynecologist and your physician whether they will allow it, because in pregnancy it's a dynamic situation. You can have pregnancy related diabetes, blood pressure, and everything. Preferably try your level best not to vape during pregnancy. I think that is something you can do for your baby. But if you feel that you just cannot manage and the alternative is using a patch or a thing, then you can use a small nick device which is controlled, and you have to take it as a drug which is just a little bit as much you require. Not 100% recommended, but if you can't, then yes, there is no association as of today as a small dose of nicotine causing damage to the fetus, but then that doesn't mean you should do it. So avoid as much as possible. That is a recommendation.
Kanav, that's not the answer you thought you'll give, right?
Yeah, I was kind of shocked. I was like, this will be like a jiffy. I'll ask him. He'll say, no, don't do it. But evidently, you know,
Yeah.
that's where having a
So
specialist comes into the picture.
see,
He
that's where
understands.
the problem is people have misunderstood nicotine right to the ages. Nicotine has never been causing so many problems as what people label it to. Yes, it is. It is a drug. It causes certain effects and side effects, but you can compare it to as its lesser cousin, which is caffeine. Caffeine can also cause problems in pregnancy. Caffeine can cause increase in heart rate. If you take 30-40 cups of coffee per day, there are people who consume that amount who get addicted to it. It causes an excessive high heart rate. Just consume 10 cups of coffee tomorrow, one after the other. See what happens to you. I mean, coffee itself, any stimulant can cause positive and negative effects. Positive is that you feel good, you feel awake. High doses, you get palpitations, you get rhythm effects. So it works for any drug. So that doesn't mean you have to be unaware of it. So that's something, yeah. It's misunderstood. Nicotine has always been misunderstood right to the ages.
Doc, you know, in the current way, the way the world goes and under the pressures and everything, people find themselves addicted to several things at times. I personally know a lot of people who are addicted to smoking and caffeine both at the same time. Right? They drink a lot of coffee also, and they smoke a hell of a lot of cigarettes also. What would you say should be their, you know, exit path, or what should they be aiming for?
More than coffee, Kanav, I would be worried about smoking and alcohol together, or vaping
Okay.
and alcohol, because usually people, when they go in a social environment, you always see smoking and alcohol being two sides of the coin, which you always see. So if you're smoking and you're consuming alcohol, or if you're vaping and you're consuming alcohol, recommended is that you reduce your amount of nicotine, because you're taking two stimulants now. Okay, there is always an interaction that can take place, and that's even more so the case if you have any other diseases like diabetes, blood pressure, you're taking medications. Both nicotine and alcohol can cause a change, or it'll interact in the way your drugs which you're taking for your diseases can affect you. So it's very important to reduce your nicotine strength when you're using it with your alcohol, to make sure that you don't end up into overages. But with caffeine, I don't think that should be a problem, because we don't drink around 5 or 6 glasses of coffee at a time. Alcohol, yes, many people do. They drink
Mhm.
5-6 glasses, and so there's a higher tendency of abusing the drug
Right.
there.
Okay, so with that's all the time we guys had today, and I'd like to start ending the show by thanking you, Doc, for joining us today. You've been
My
Thank
pleasure to
you.
really
meet all of you all.
insightful,
I
and
met you all after such a long time.
yeah, we've been missing you. I've met you once, and that was probably one of the most fun times of my life. Like, other than being a brilliant doctor, he's a brilliant comedian also. He's really funny and witty with his responses.
I've just
So
been traveling all over the place here.
yeah, we understand. We understand you've been busy, but whenever possible, please keep joining us. A lot of people who've given a lot of love for you. The comment section is full of a lot of gratitude from people towards you. So whenever possible, do join us, and that'll be
Sure,
excellent.
My pleasure.
You can answer more. And
Thanks, Doc.
guys, from now on, every time we're going to be signing off, we're going to let Juggy crack a joke for you guys, to entertain you, give you one laugh, because as the doc says, that laughter is the best medicine. And if the joke is not good, I'll post Juggy's email address. You give him the feedback.
It's really funny that you mentioned that, Kanav, because just today on Radio Ishq in Bombay, I actually gave a whole interview on why people should laugh during the lockdown. I'll send it to you.
Please do.
Okay. Before I start this joke, my email ID is kanavkumar@gmail.com. Okay. I maintained 2-3 of them. So okay. This is again going back into my history lessons, and I wouldn't advise a lot of you to try it. I mean, you got to have, nerves of steel and helmets lying around. So anyway, my wife was making eggs the other day in the kitchen, and I walked up to her and I'm like, "Where's the salt? Salt! You've not added the goddamn salt. Add the goddamn salt. Did you stir it? And she gives me this weird look, and I'm like, flip it. You never flip it when I ask you to flip it. Flip the damn thing. It's going to burn. Flip it. Now look, you missed it. She's looking at me weirdly and looks at me. What the fuck is wrong with you? Think I don't know how to make an omelet? I told her, something. The same thing happens when I drive as well. You think I don't know how to drive? I still lift it a little, but I don't recommend all of you to try this. Peace.
Jaggi, I have a very good friend of mine in Hyderabad. He's a very good orthopedic surgeon.
Okay.
You'll need him after your wife listens to this.
Yeah, I didn't think, but then, truth be told, I didn't think I would talk about this thing. I mean, this is a part of lessons learned. But then I had to share, don't try these things at home, guys.
Oh God, Jaggi.
Anyway, kanavkumar@gmail.com in case you didn't like this joke, right?
Yeah. Everyone send all abusive emails to that email address because it's not mine. I don't know whose it is, but abuse that guy. He took it away from me.
So this reminds me of one small funny incident that happened to me on one of my patients. He came to my clinic, and it was a typical trader, and he was very busy, and so he came to me as a diabetic patient. So he had diabetes, blood pressure, जो दुनिया में सब था, everything he had. So I asked him, "आप non-veg खाते हो?" He said, "नहीं." "Cigarette पीते हैं?" He said, "नहीं." "तंबाकू खाते हैं?" He said, "नहीं." "शादी किया?" He said, "नहीं." "गर्लफ्रेंड है?" He said, "नहीं." "लड़के पसंद है?" "नहीं." I said, "मुजरा में जाते हो, डांस बार में जाते हो?" He said, "नहीं." I said, "पान खाते हो?" He said, "नहीं." I didn't know what to say to him. I said, "Hey, काम करो, there is a website. You go there and take lifetime membership." He said, "Sir, कौन सा website है?" I said, www.bhosidikepaidakiyuva.com.
Guys, we've given the PG. We've given the PG-18 disclaimer. This is an adult-only stream. We've said it time and again. If you guys were in a bad position, your fault. We've said this is not safe for work at all.
That Petty Bugger actually thought it was a real website.
Sir, लिख लेता हूँ.
So everybody's entitled.
Did he
to
ask
their
for a
own voice.
prescription?
Okay,
Yeah,
guys,
I would have lost my license. Then I had to believe in that whole thing. Kaya nahi, piya nahi, glass thoda pa raha tha.
Samrat, Dhaval, Jaggi, Manish, Doc, we guys need to sign off. This is all going on. The banter can continue, but we need to go offline. So thank you everyone for joining us today.
Man. See you guys.
I just
appreciate your
have
love and support.
One small thing to say.
Yes,
Doc,
Manish.
you have to come back to live stream. This can't be the only time you are on Funvocacy.
Done. I'll coordinate with Jaggi and Samrat.
Yeah,
Doc, मेरा
that was
ये
really,
क्या
really,
लगा
really
है?
nice to have you.
Next time we'll make it a little bit more. थोड़ा PG निकल के थोड़ा above 18 कर दो यार. यार वो I am not feeling in my element. You made it very PG. It becomes problem now. अभी इसको थोड़ा now you from this PG you remove this PG shit and make it VG now यार.
We definitely need to do this again.
अगले बार R rating होना मांगते हैं यार. नहीं तो मैं नहीं बात करता.
Done. We're gonna have a special R-rated episode of AVI.
Then I will come on. Right?
Thank you.
Over there,
Yes.
all dirty, filthy things
Okay.
allowed. We won't leave the video evidence.
All right,
we'll
Doc.
do in
Thanks
the end,
so much.
produced and directed by Jagannath Sarangapani. So if there's any
Oh, bloody hell. Yeah, we actually should.
okay, chalo guys. It's
All
a
right.
really fun
Chalo,
time.
guys.
Nice to see you.
Everyone,
Bye,
take
bye.
care.
Have a
Thank
nice-
you for
Take
your
care.
support, and hope to see you next time. Also, we'll be doing one
Yep.
soon, and we'll keep you posted on when we are doing it while we finalize. Because the lockdown is kind of in a extended but restrictions removed scenario. As and when things move, we know when the right time to host the next stream will be, and we'll let you know. So please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp groups. Stay in touch. Subscribe to us, please, so that you know when the next stream is happening. And we hope to see you there. Thank you and take care.
Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.
All right,
Thank
guys,
you, everyone,
take
for
care,
joining
stay
us.
safe.
Ciao.
Stay safe,
you.
everyone. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Everybody sing that shit.